Hello guys, Joe again. How'd you like my new intro? Was it good? Right. Some of you guys probably noticed that I haven't made any videos for a couple months. And you're probably wondering, where have you been, Joe? It's a good question. Well, I've just recently discovered the works of Ray Harryhausen. Now, for those of you who are not film school students and don't know what the hell I'm talking about, I'm gonna bring up his profile. Ray Harryhausen, 1920 to 2013, was a special effects artist who had lost his stop-motion work prior to the 80s. Stop-motion animation is basically a modified version of the flipbook animation used by Walt Disney back in the 20s and 30s. I mean, the only difference is that instead of using two-dimensional drawings, you're using a three-dimensional articulated model. Imagine that this Hero Factory toy represented a stop-motion puppet. Basically, you shoot a picture of him, then you move him slightly, you shoot another picture, move him slightly some more, repeat the process hundreds of times, and you have what is called stop-motion animation. That's basically where your character looks like it's moving on its own. When most of you guys think of stop-motion, you probably think of claymation cartoons, like Wallace and Gromit, The Nightmare Before Christmas, and Gumby. Am I right? Harryhausen, on the other hand, used to create creature effects back before CGI existed. And believe me, his special effects were considered so amazing at that time, they've earned the nickname, the grandfather of modern special effects. And my next few videos shall be dedicated to him. And in this video, I'm going to show you guys how to build a wire armature. Now some of you guys are probably wondering, Joe, what is an armature? That's a very good question, and I'll be happy to answer that question. An armature is the main component of any kind of stop-motion puppet. It's a simple machine that has multiple joints that you can position however you want. It'll stay in that position. This device will serve as a skeleton for a stop-motion puppet. Now there are two different types of armatures. First, there's a ball socket armature. There's also a wire armature. A ball socket armature is recommended most. Basically, it's a lot more durable, less prone to metal tension. Ultimately, you can get a lot longer life out of your puppets if they have a ball socket armature. A wire armature is easier to make, and can still be just as good. I'm going to show you guys how to make both. First, I'm going to show you guys how to make a wire armature, because you don't need any power tools for that. Our budget for this build is going to be about $15. And without further ado, let's see what we need. Some paper to draw on, armature wire, miscellaneous nuts and bolts, and epoxy putty. Alright guys, let's get started. The first thing you need to start with is this drawing that I have linked in the description below. This armature is going to be about 6 inches tall. I know it's not really easy to tell here, but it has marked joints on it. The name of the game for this build is armature wire. And you do want to get certified aluminum armature wire, by the way. Do not attempt to build an armature using galvanized steel wire. It'll be almost impossible to animate, and it'll be much more prone to metal tension. Using your drawing as a guide, you basically want to measure out how much armature wire you need. And here you're just kind of overshooting, by the way. Basically, you line the armature wire with your thing head to toe and then you basically do that twice. You want to repeat that process at least 4 times. Now most stop-motion puppet tutorials will recommend you have the wire twisted up against itself tightly. I do not advise that because that actually weakens the wire. But you do want to twist it up against itself just enough so that it can stay together while you're working. Once you do that, and you have the body of your armature. Use a similar method to create the arms, only here, using the arms as an outline for it, and not the legs. When your armature looks like this, it's ready to have bones put onto it. We're going to do that using epoxy putty, or accurately, steel stick from JB Weld. Do not get epoxy glue. That's to be the compound that you mix together to form a clay-like substance, and over time sets up rock solid. Using a hobby knife, you cut off about as much of the epoxy putty as you need. Then you basically knead it together by hand until it basically forms a solid color. Just keep in mind that you will need to wash your hands when you're done with this, because it can irritate your skin. Now, you will want to put the epoxy putty directly onto the armature, which we will want to have exposed armature wire in certain areas. The epoxy putty only gives it bones, by the way. In plans for this armature that I have linked in the description below, I'll have epoxy putty areas shaded in on the armature so that you know where that's go. Now that you can give this armature bones, I'm going to talk about tie downs. I'm going to tell you what I mean by that in just a few seconds, but I'll tell you what you need for it right now. You will need a machine bolt, a wing nut, and an acorn nut. The acorn nut gets epoxy putty into the foot. Just don't get any epoxy putty inside the nut or on the threads of the screw. A puppet with tie downs can be bolted to the animation stage, which will make it possible to animate something that can't support its own weight on one foot, like a biped or something like that. Now you want to let the epoxy putty cure, and just like that, you've just created a 6-inch tall wire armature, complete with functioning heels, knees, and hips, as well as clavicles, a flexible spine, more than 1 degree of freedom in the neck, and also arms with elbows, a wrist, and hands. And I mentioned the separately articulated fingers, and it has tie downs in the feet, making it possible to animate walking.
It's time for a stop motion montage.
Hello guys. And guys, that wraps up my video on making wire armatures, by the way. And if you like this video, you can click the yellow subscribe button, and stay tuned for my next video. Because there, I'm going to be showing you guys how to build a ball socket armature, followed by a tutorial on making latex stop motion puppets. This has been my video, and I'll be seeing you later. As with any kind of photography, stop motion requires some light. Generally, I recommend 3-point light setup. The only requirements for a light is that it can stay put while shooting. I use these, the 150 watt clamp lights. They're pretty inexpensive too.
Look like John Belushi here.
And jellyfishing.